The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Westbrook Financial's executive suite, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany conference table. Marcus Johnson took a deep breath as he straightened his tie, a graduation gift from his father, and prepared to enter the room where his future awaited. At 22, Marcus possessed a kind of quiet confidence that came from being raised to believe in his own worth. His resume, though lacking the prestigious internships and family connections that many of his peers boasted, reflected a young man who had worked twice as hard for every opportunity. Howard University scholarship, president of the economics club, weekend shifts at his uncle's hardware store to cover textbooks and living expenses. Mr. Johnson? The assistant's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Mr. Westbrook will see you now. Richard Westbrook III, CEO of Westbrook Financial, didn't look up when Marcus entered. His attention remained fixed on what Marcus assumed was his resume, spread across the spotless desk. "Take a seat," Westbrook said, his voice carrying the distinctive cadence of old money in private schools. At 55, he wore his power like a tailored suit, comfortably and with practiced ease. Marcus settled into the chair opposite Westbrook, maintaining the straight-backed posture his mother had instilled in him. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me, sir. I'm excited about the opportunity to contribute to Westbrook's summer analyst program." Westbrook finally looked up, his pale blue eyes taking in Marcus's appearance with a slow, evaluative gaze that revealed nothing. "So," he began, tapping Marcus's resume with a manicured finger. "Howard University. Interesting choice." Marcus had heard this before, the subtle implication, the unspoken question. "Howard has an excellent business program, sir. I was fortunate to receive a scholarship." Westbrook's lips curved into what might have been a smile. "And you worked at Jordan's Hardware throughout college?" "Yes, sir. My uncle's store. It taught me a lot about small business operations and customer service." "I see." Westbrook leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Your resume is different from what we typically see at Westbrook. Our summer analysts usually come from Ivy League backgrounds. Harvard, Yale, Wharton." Marcus felt a familiar tightness in his chest, but kept his expression neutral. "I understand, sir. But I believe my academic achievements and work ethic speak for themselves. I graduated summa cum laude and—" Yes, Westbrook interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. "But this is Wall Street, Mr. Johnson. It's about more than grades. It's about connections, pedigree, understanding the world our clients inhabit." The air in the room seemed to thicken. Marcus had prepared for this. The polite rejection dressed up his concern, the subtle questioning of his fit. "With all due respect, sir," Marcus said carefully, "I believe diversity of perspective is valuable in any organization. My background brings a different viewpoint that could benefit your clients." Westbrook's eyebrows rose slightly. Bold statement. He picked up the resume again, his eyes narrowing. "Tell me, Mr. Johnson, have you ever been on a yacht? Played around at Winged Foot? Attended the Met Gala?" Marcus felt heat rising in his face, but kept his voice steady. "No, sir, but I've analyzed financial markets, developed investment strategies, and built relationships with people from all walks of life." A cold smile spread across Westbrook's face. "This isn't about ability, Mr. Johnson. It's about belonging. Our clients trust us with their money because we understand their world." He tossed the resume onto the desk. "How would you advise a client on their vineyard investment if you've never tasted fine wine? How would you discuss their art collection if you've never been to Christie's?" The implication hung in the air between them. Marcus felt his hands tighten into fists beneath the table. "I believe in learning quickly, sir," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "And I believe in the power of fresh perspectives." Westbrook laughed, a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. "Fresh perspectives don't pay the bills, Mr. Johnson. This isn't a diversity initiative. It's a business." Marcus held Westbrook's gaze, refusing to look away. "I'm not asking for charity, sir. I'm asking for an opportunity to prove my worth. And I'm explaining why that opportunity would be wasted on both of us. Westbrook glanced at his watch. I have another meeting in 5 minutes. HR will contact you with our decision, but I suggest you look into firms that might be a better cultural fit. Marcus stood, extending his hand across the desk. Thank you for your time, Mr. Westbrook. Westbrook looked at the offered hand with faint surprise before shaking it briefly. Good luck with your career, Mr. Johnson. As Marcus turned to leave, the door to the office opened. A tall, distinguished black man in his 60s entered, his presence immediately commanding attention. Richard. Sorry to interrupt, but the man stopped, his eyes widening as they fell on Marcus. Marcus? What are you doing here? Marcus felt a wave of surprise, followed by a rush of warmth. Uncle Robert? I didn't know you'd be here. Robert Johnson, not Marcus's actual uncle, but his father's oldest friend and a figure who had been present throughout Marcus's childhood. Looked between Marcus and Westbrook with growing understanding. You two know each other? Westbrook asked, his voice suddenly lacking its previous confidence. Robert's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Yes, we do. Marcus is William Johnson's son. The color drained from Westbrook's face. William Johnson? The William Johnson of Johnson Capital Partners. The same, Robert confirmed, placing a protective hand on Marcus's shoulder. One of the most successful black-owned investment firms on the East Coast and, as of this morning, your company's largest minority shareholder. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Westbrook's eyes darted between Marcus and Robert, recalculation evident in every line of his face. I wasn't aware, he finally managed. Robert's smile didn't reach his eyes. Clearly. Marcus, does your father know you're interviewing here? Marcus shook his head. No. I wanted to see if I could make it on my own merits. Understanding dawned in Robert's eyes, followed by a flash of pride. I see. Well, I'm here for the shareholders' meeting. Your father will be joining us shortly. The look of dawning horror on Westbrook's face would have been comical under different circumstances. Mr. Johnson, perhaps we should continue our discussion. I think we've covered everything, sir, Marcus interrupted, his voice steady. As you said, it's about cultural fit, and I'm not sure this is the right fit for me. With that, Marcus turned and walked toward the door, his back straight and his head held high. Behind him, he could hear Westbrook fumbling for words in Robert's low, measured voice beginning what sounded like a very uncomfortable conversation. As the door closed behind him, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. He hadn't gotten the internship, but he'd gotten something far more valuable, a glimpse of the world he was entering and the strength to face it on his own terms. His father had always told him that true character revealed itself in moments of pressure. Today, Marcus had discovered his own. The sky outside had darkened with gathering storm clouds by the time Marcus made it to the lobby. He loosened his ties slightly, letting out a long breath that seemed to carry the weight of the morning's encounter. His phone buzzed with a text from his father. In town for the shareholders' meeting. Dinner tonight? Marcus smiled despite himself. William Johnson had always had impeccable timing, even when he wasn't trying. He typed back a quick yes before pushing through the revolving doors into the humid New York summer. The prestigious address of Westbrook Financial faded behind him as Marcus walked, his mind replaying the interview. The dismissal in Westbrook's eyes hadn't surprised him. It was a look he'd seen before, the quick assessment and dismissal based on appearance rather than substance. What had surprised him was his own calm in the face of it. 3 blocks away, Marcus found a small park and settled onto a bench. He pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. Mom, got a minute? Evelyn Johnson's warm voice flowed through the phone like a bomb. For you? Always. How did the interview go? Marcus hesitated, considering how much to share. His mother had always been his sounding board, the steady presence who helped to make sense of a world that didn't always make sense. It went exactly how you'd expect, he finally said. The guy took one look at my resume and basically told me I didn't belong. His mother's silence spoke volumes. When she finally responded, her voice carried the quiet strength that had guided their family through countless challenges. And how did that make you feel? It was such a simple question, but so like her, cutting straight to the heart of things, creating space for his truth. Honestly, at first angry, then almost peaceful, Marcus watched a group of pigeons scatter as a child ran laughing through the park. It was like I finally saw the game clearly, you know? He wasn't rejecting me because of what was on my resume. He was rejecting me because of what he assumed wasn't in my background. And then Uncle Robert walked in and dropped Dad's name, and suddenly Mr. Westbrook couldn't backpedal fast enough. Marcus let out a short laugh. You should have seen his face, Mom. I can imagine. There was a smile in her voice, but also something more. Your father had many such moments when he was building his firm. The surprise when people realized who he was, what he had built, the scramble to reposition. Marcus nodded, though she couldn't see him. I know, he's told me some stories, but experiencing it firsthand was different. So what happens now? She asked. It was the question Marcus had been asking himself since leaving the building. I'm not taking the internship, even if they offer it, which they probably will now. Because of your father's position? Exactly. And that's not how I want to start my career. Marcus watched as people hurried past, umbrellas at the ready as the first drops of rain began to fall. I want to be valued for what I bring to the table, not who my father is. I'm proud of you, his mother said simply. That takes courage. I learn from the best, Marcus replied. Both of you. After saying goodbye, Marcus sat for a moment longer as the rain began to fall more steadily. His phone buzzed with an email notification. Curious, he opened it to find a message from Robert Johnson. Marcus, your father and I are in a meeting with the Westbrook board until 5. Join us for dinner at the Capitol Grill at 7. There's much to discuss. Proud of how you handled yourself today. RJ. Marcus smiled, tucking his phone away and opening his umbrella against the strengthening downpour. As he walked through the rain-slicked streets, his mind drifted to his father's journey, a story he'd grown up hearing in fragments. William Johnson had started with nothing but determination and a brilliant mind for markets. In the early 1990s, when black-owned financial firms were rare, he built Johnson Capital Partners from the ground up, weathering economic storms and entrenched racism with equal resolve. Now his firm managed billions in assets and had earned respect even from those who had once doubted. Marcus had grown up in a world of privilege his father never knew. Private schools, summer camps, college without debt. But William had made sure his son understood both worlds, the comfort they now enjoyed and the struggle that had preceded it. Every summer, Marcus worked. Not at his father's firm, but in community programs, local businesses, places where he could learn the value of hard work and human connection. Never forget where we came from, his father often said, and never let anyone tell you where you belong. By the time Marcus arrived at the Capitol Grill that evening, the rain had stopped, leaving the city streets glistening under the early evening lights. He spotted his father immediately. William Johnson had a presence that commanded attention even in a room full of power brokers. There he is, William rose, embracing his son warmly. At 60, he carried himself with the easy confidence of a man who had nothing left to prove. Robert told me about your adventure at Westbrook today. Marcus slid into his seat, accepting the glass of water a server poured. Not exactly how I planned to meet the CEO. Robert chuckled. Richard Westbrook has been doing damage control all afternoon. Called an emergency board meeting, pledged to review their hiring practices. He made air quotes with his fingers. William's expression remained neutral, but his eyes were sharp. What exactly did he say to you, son? Marcus recounted the interview, keeping his tone even. As he spoke, he noticed his father's expression growing more thoughtful, not angry as he might have expected. When Marcus finished, William nodded slowly. And you're not interested in taking the position if they offer it now? No, Marcus said firmly. That's not how I want to start. A smile spread across William's face. Good. I'd have been disappointed if you'd said yes. Robert leaned forward. But there's something else we want to discuss with you, Marcus. Something your father and I have been planning for some time. William nodded. Johnson Capital is expanding, opening a new division focused on community investment and development, small business loans, affordable housing projects, financial literacy programs in underserved neighborhoods. His eyes met his son's. We need someone to head it up, someone who understands both worlds. Marcus felt a surge of surprise. Dad, I just graduated. I don't have the experience to. You won't be alone, Robert interjected. You'll have a team of veterans, mentors. But we need someone with fresh eyes, someone who sees potential where others might not. Someone, William added, who believes in the power of fresh perspectives. Marcus recognized his own words from the interview thrown back at him. He looked between the two men, his father and his father's oldest friend, and saw not just familial pride, but professional respect. You're serious about this, he said finally. Completely, William confirmed. But not because you're my son. Because I've watched you work with community organizations since you were 16. I've seen the relationships you've built, the trust you've earned. That's not something that can be taught in business school. Robert nodded in agreement. The financial world is changing, Marcus. Slow, yes, but changing. Clients, especially younger ones, want their investments to mean something beyond profits. They want impact. And Westbrook, Marcus asked, what happens with them? William's smile turned slightly predatory. Oh, we'll keep our investment. For now. And we'll watch very carefully how they respond to today's revelation. Consider it a case study, Robert added with a wink, how businesses react when their unconscious biases are suddenly exposed. As they ordered dinner, the conversation shifted to specifics of the new division. Projected funding, target communities, measures of success beyond simple profit margins. With each detail, Marcus felt his initial hesitation giving way to excitement. This was an opportunity to build something meaningful, to create pathways for others who might otherwise be dismissed as quickly as he had been that morning. By the time dessert arrived, Marcus had filled 3 pages of his pocket notebook with ideas and questions. William watched his son with quiet pride. You know, he said as they were finishing, when I started Johnson Capital, people told me I was out of my mind, that no one would trust their money to a firm like mine. What changed their minds? Marcus asked, though he'd heard versions of this story before. William leaned back in his chair. Results, excellence, and time. Always took twice as long to get in the door, but once we did, he shrugged. Numbers don't lie. And neither does character, Robert added meaningfully. As they left the restaurant, William placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Take the weekend to think about it. This isn't an offer based on obligation. If you want to make your own way, I'll respect that. Marcus nodded, knowing his father meant what he said. I will, but honestly, I'm already excited about the possibilities. The 3 men stood for a moment under the awning, the city humming around them. Then William smiled, the same smile that had reassured investors during market crashes and guided his family through personal challenges. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Because change doesn't happen from the outside. It happens when people like us get in the room where decisions are made. As a sleek town car pulled up to take his father and Robert to their hotel, Marcus felt a surge of clarity. The day had begun with rejection from a world that couldn't see his value. It was ending with an invitation to help build a new one that could. The headquarters of Johnson Capital Partners occupied 3 floors of a gleaming office tower in downtown Manhattan. Unlike the old money-wood paneling of Westbrook Financial, the space embraced light and transparency, glass walls, modern art from diverse artists, and an open design that encouraged collaboration. Marcus stood at the window of what would soon be his office, gazing out at the city's skyline bathed in morning light. 3 weeks had passed since that fateful interview at Westbrook. 3 weeks of planning, meeting potential team members, and laying the groundwork for what they were now calling the Community Empowerment Division. Settling in, his father's voice came from the doorway. Marcus turned with a smile. Still feels surreal. William crossed the room to stand beside his son. For a moment, they both looked out at the city in comfortable silence. You know, William said finally, when I built this company, I had a dream that went beyond making money. I wanted to create something that would open doors. He turned to face Marcus. Not just for me, but for everyone who came after me. Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of legacy his father carried. Not just as a businessman, but as a trailblazer. The thing about doors, William continued, is that someone has to be brave enough to walk through them first, and smart enough to leave them open behind them. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Angela Chun, the firm's head of communications, stood in the doorway with a tablet in hand. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's something you both should see." She crossed the room and handed the tablet to William. Westbrook Financial just announced a new diversity initiative and leadership change. William scanned the press release, his expression revealing nothing. After a moment, he passed the tablet to Marcus. The headline read, "Westbrook Financial announces new diversity initiative and leadership changes." Below was a photo of Richard Westbrook shaking hands with a woman Marcus recognized as Dr. Keisha Washington, a respected economist and advocate for financial inclusion. They've appointed Dr. Washington as head of a new division focused on expanding financial access and opportunity in underserved communities. Marcus read aloud, unable to hide his surprise. "Keep reading," Angela prompted. Marcus scrolled down, and Richard Westbrook is stepping down as CEO, effective immediately. He'll remain on the board, but day-to-day operations will be handled by... His eyes widened. "Robert." William's smile was small but satisfied. Robert's been on their board for years. He was always the most qualified successor, but they kept passing him over. "You knew about this?" Marcus looked up from the tablet. "Let's just say the shareholders' meeting was productive," William replied. "But this isn't about punishing Westbrook. It's about transformation." Angela took back the tablet. "The media is already connecting dots between our new Community Empowerment Division and Westbrook's announcement. They're calling it a sea change in how Wall Street approaches diversity and community investment." "They're not wrong," Williams said. "But this isn't the end of the story. It's barely the beginning." After Angela left, Marcus sank into his chair, processing the implications. "So Robert will be running Westbrook?" "For a transitional period," William confirmed. "Long enough to implement real change in their culture and practices." He sat in the chair opposite Marcus. "But don't worry about Westbrook. Focus on what we're building here." Marcus leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I've been thinking about that. What if we approach this not just as investment, but as partnership, working directly with community leaders, understanding needs from the ground up?" William's expression grew thoughtful. "Go on." "The people in these communities don't just need capital. They need respect, recognition of their expertise, about their own needs." Marcus's voice gained confidence as he spoke. "What if every project begins with listening? What if we measure success not just in financial returns, but in sustainable community growth?" A slow smile spread across William's face. "You're talking about changing the fundamental relationship between capital and community." "Exactly." Marcus nodded, enthusiasm building. "The traditional model keeps the power entirely with the investors. But what if we share that power? Build genuine partnerships?" William leaned back in his chair, studying his son with newfound appreciation. "You know, when I built this firm, I had to play by certain rules to get in the door. I had to prove we could succeed on their terms before I could start changing those terms. And now we have the opportunity to write new rules." William's voice carried the weight of decades of experience, both the victories and the battles that had left scars. "It won't be easy. There will be resistance, both external and internal." "I'm counting on it," Marcus replied with quiet determination, "because that resistance is where the real work happens." William nodded, his eyes reflecting pride that went beyond paternal affection. "You're ready for this." The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, with potential team members, community organizers, and financial analysts trying to understand the new metrics Marcus was proposing. By evening, when most of the staff had departed, Marcus found himself back in his office, surrounded by spreadsheets and proposal drafts. A knock at his door revealed Zoe Washington, Dr. Washington's daughter and a financial analyst who had been recommended for Marcus's team. "Your father said you were still here," she said with a smile. "Apparently workaholism runs in the Johnson family." Marcus laughed, gesturing for her to enter. "Just try and get a handle on everything." Have you seen the community needs assessment for Bedford-Stuyvesant? Zoe nodded, taking a seat across from him. I have. What struck me was the disconnect between what outside analysts identified as priorities and what community surveys showed. Exactly, Marcus said, pulling up a document on his screen. The external analysis focuses on property values and commercial development, but the community surveys show affordable housing, support for existing small businesses, and youth programs as the top priorities. So which do we prioritize? Zoe asked, though her tone suggested she already knew his answer. We start with what the community says it needs, Marcus replied firmly, and we build from there. Zoe studied him for a moment. You know this approach is going to yield slower returns on investment, at least initially. Yes, Marcus acknowledged, but that's where we need to shift our thinking. What's the true return on investment when a community thrives? When small businesses grow and hire locally, when families have stable housing, and young people have opportunities? The board might need convincing, Zoe pointed out. Marcus smiled. That's why we're developing new metrics, ones that capture the full impact of our investments, not just the quarterly numbers. They worked for another hour, refining the approach for the Bedford-Stuyvesant project. As they were wrapping up, Zoe's expression grew more serious. Can I ask you something personal? When Marcus nodded, she continued. My mother told me about what happened with Westbrook, about your interview. Marcus's expression revealed his surprise. She did. She said it was a perfect example of how systems perpetuate themselves, how the same biases that kept people like our parents out of rooms are still operating, just in more subtle ways. Zoe met his gaze directly. She also said your response was what impressed her most. My response? Walking away from the opportunity, even after they knew who your father was. Zoe smiled. That's why she agreed to join Westbrook's board, because Robert Johnson convinced her that real change was possible there. Marcus hadn't known that Dr. Washington had joined Westbrook's board. Another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Your mother is a legend, he said with genuine admiration. Her work on financial inclusion shaped my thinking long before I knew I'd be in this position. The feeling is mutual, Zoe assured him. She said to tell you she's looking forward to collaboration, not competition, between our divisions. After Zoe left, Marcus found himself thinking about the interconnected nature of their work, how what happened at Johnson Capital would influence Westbrook, and vice versa, how change in one institution could catalyze transformation across an industry. His phone buzzed with a text from his father. Dinner at home. Mom's cooking. No excuses. Marcus smiled. No matter how busy life got, family dinner remained sacred in the Johnson household. He began gathering his things, his mind still working through the Bedford-Stuyvesant proposal. As he was leaving, his phone rang, an unknown number. Marcus Johnson. He answered, pressing the elevator button. Mr. Johnson, this is Richard Westbrook. Marcus froze, his finger hovering over the lobby button. Mr. Westbrook, this is unexpected. I imagine so. Westbrook's voice sounded different. Less commanding, more thoughtful. I'll be brief. I owe you an apology. My behavior during our interview was indefensible. Marcus remained silent, allowing the moment to stretch. The truth is, Westbrook continued, I saw in you something that threatened me. Not your qualifications, which are impressive, but your confidence. Your certainty that you belonged in rooms where people like me have always assumed we belonged exclusively. The elevator doors opened, but Marcus didn't step inside. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm learning, Westbrook replied with surprising humility. At Dr. Washington's insistence, we're implementing a blind resume review process for all future hiring. Names, schools, identifying information, all redacted during initial screenings. That's a positive step, Marcus acknowledged. It's a beginning, Westbrook agreed. I also understand your division at Johnson Capital will be focusing on community investment, as will our new initiative under Dr. Washington. That's right. I hope there will be opportunities for collaboration, for learning from each other. Marcus considered this for a moment. I believe there will be, but real collaboration requires equal respect. Equal voice at the table. I understand that now, Westbrook said quietly. Better than I did. After the call ended, Marcus stepped into the elevator, his mind replaying the conversation. As the doors closed, he caught his reflection in the polished metal. The same young man who had entered Westbrook Financial 3 weeks ago, yet somehow different. The elevator descended, and Marcus thought about doors. Those that had been closed to his father, those that had opened because of his father's perseverance, and those that he himself was now positioned to create. When the doors opened onto the lobby, Marcus stepped out with renewed purpose. The work ahead was challenging, complex, and absolutely necessary. And he was ready, not just to walk through doors, but to build new ones where none had existed before. Outside, the setting sun cast long shadows across the city streets. Marcus paused for a moment, feeling the weight of both legacy and possibility. Then he began walking toward home, where his family waited, and where the conversations that would shape their collective future would continue. The story of Westbrook and the Johnsons wasn't ending. In many ways, it was just beginning. A story not just about confronting bias, but about transforming systems. Not just about individual success, but about creating pathways for collective advancement. Marcus smiled as he walked, remembering something his father often said. True wealth isn't what you accumulate. It's what you enable others to build. Today, that lesson had never felt more real or more urgent.